Hello, this is Alexis, and today we are gonna make a comparison video between the EXN high-speed version and the Sherman Max. As I've owned both of these wheels, the EXN HS for about 1700 miles, whereas the Sherman Max for about 1200 miles, I have decided to sell one of them, and I'd like to share my thoughts and the reason of my decision with you. First, I will outline the basic technical specifications, highlighting the differences between the two. Then, I will share my experiences with both wheels. Finally, I will discuss why I have sold my EXN HS. Here you go, you've got the answer. Now, starting with the basic specifications, both wheels share the same motor power of 2800 watts, and they are both 20-inch wheels with a 100-volt system. Moving on to the main differences. First thing first, the weight. The Max is a whopping 39 kilogram machine, whereas the EXN is around 34. Some people may not feel the weight difference, but I did. With time, I could get used to the extra weight of the Max, which only limited me in jumps or agility trails. Not so much because it is impossible to jump on Sherman Max, but because 39 kilos can really damage the shell and the rim, which in fact have bends, although it's supposed to be stronger than the ordinary Sherman. Second main difference that I found is the battery size. So, the Max houses almost 3600 watt-hour Samsung 50E batteries, which bring you far, very far. I did about 90 miles in one day, and I still had 17% of battery left. On the day, I wasn't trying to go slow. It was a mix of 30 miles of off-road, and the other 60 miles on the roads performed extremely well. I was really satisfied. It prevented me from having range anxiety. It also feels great not to having to carry a charger all the time, everywhere, or being paranoid about trying to find somewhere to charge and waste an hour or more sitting around instead of doing what I enjoy doing the most, which is riding. On the other hand, we have the EXN HS that incorporates 2700 watt-hour LG batteries, which used to give me about 50 to 65 miles worth of range, depending on how fast I was going, where and how much I was carrying with me. Another difference is the form factor. The Max is slimmer but taller, which has the edge on stability, whereas the EXN is wider but shorter, which gives me the edge on the agility and fun factor. Another difference I was going to look into was pedal height. However, unfortunately, I've sold my EXN HS before I actually measured it myself. Finally, why did I sell my EXN HS? One of the reasons is that I need the range, and top range is given me by the Sherman Max. Why I had more miles on the EXN than the Sherman? Well, simply because I was using the EXN more than the Sherman Max, because it's more fun, more agile, faster. The performance of the EXN is extraordinary. However, one of the reasons why I sold it is because it required too much maintenance, too much modification. I'm not the kind of person who is knowledgeable about maintaining their wheels. For every single thing that was wrong, I always had to bring my wheel to the engineers, and that meant less riding time for me, which on a long run was annoying. First thing was overheating problems. So I asked to add an extra fan. I asked to add cooling holes. They added an extra heatsink. It still was not cooling appropriately. Bear in mind that this summer was extremely hot, and I've started mountain bike trail riding with intense hill climb, which meant that the temperature would go above 65 degrees, which I have set from the EUC World App. The tilt back in itself would go higher, but I don't want to risk to burn the motherboard. Trail riding during summertime, the EXN HS would hit those 65 degrees pretty frequently, which means at every 20 minutes I would have to stop and rest at least 5 minutes to wait for the motherboard to cool down. Not fun. The EXN, it's the best performance wheel I have ever had and tried. I loved it. I love how torquey it felt, how fast it went, the fact that I couldn't get it to beep unless I really, really tried to, which was amazing coming from an EXN high torque, a Kingston 16X. I love that. I loved being able to keep up with traffic with that higher safety margin that made me feel more in control. However, the quality of the EXN made it so it took a lot of extra cash to make it work the way I wanted. The side to side imbalance, I did for a while as well, but then my feet, my positioning got adjusted, and yeah, I didn't feel it anymore. Secondly, felt that the wheel dragged me too much backwards. So I tried to calibrate the wheel forward. However, that's not my style of riding, so I couldn't get comfortable because I usually have every wheel calibrated backwards, at least like 2 or 3 degrees. That's just my personal style. So the only way for me to make it work was to swap the lights around, the pedals around, and just ride it backwards. And oh boy, amazing. It felt like an high torque wheel at that point. The drawback was that I've experienced more wobbles, so I had to train harder to control them. The Max, on the other hand, I just needed to buy a seat, kneel on over pedals. I used my personal preferential pads, and then I just put some protective bits and pieces around the roll bar, but that was it. Nothing else major. The mudguard. It didn't come with a mudguard. Well, at least I could find something that fitted. And cheaper than the original mudguard. The Max is also more weather resistant than the EXN, which means that there is less chance for water or dust to penetrate inside the shell. Thereby, the electronic and batteries are by factory more protected. I have to make a quick note though, because in the first batches of the Sherman Maxes, the motor cable wasn't sealed properly, so please check with your dealers if your Sherman Max is affected. Coming to a conclusion, both wheels are an excellent choice. However, off-roading, I was choosing the EXN, and on-roads, I was choosing the EXN. Why? Because it felt like a Ferrari. It had that fun factor, agility, and temper that was really addictive, both on roads and off roads. However, I was choosing the Max over the EXN on group rides because typically they were quite long range, and I didn't want to bring my charger with me as it's heavy. And on night rides, where the lights of the Max are better, although I would still bring a spare headlight in case for safety. And it really feels like a Cadillac. It has all the accessories that you might need and more, and they work really well. The roll bar is genius. I love it. It helps me to carry the Max everywhere, on the train, up the stairs, in shops. The slim factor is there. I can, store it more easily. It can fit into narrower places, and the range is king on the Max. So group rides, long rides, there you have it. Where the Max lacks a bit is really off-roading because of the weight. It handles less well technical rides like mountain bike, trails, and more rooty, rocky kind of terrains, because I could feel its weight more. Not to forget, it's about 6 to 7 kilograms heavier than the EXN. So, another reason why, after I've been riding the EXN high speed more, I still decided to sell, simply because I was using it mainly as a trail wheel, as an off-road wheel. And with all the wheels coming out recently, I found that there is a much better trail wheel that I'm interested in. So I ended up purchasing a Master 50E. Whereas, on the other hand, I chose the Sherman because then it's my on-road, long range, comfortable, reliable, stable wheel. And with that, if you have any questions, ask away. For now, ciao ciao!